Hello there my RPG lovers and welcome to another video. In my previous video on the channel, I mentioned that I finally got to play the new demo for Bleak Faith Forsaken, and like I promised, here's a dedicated video about my experience with the demo. This game has been in development for a couple of years by only two guys. I have followed each and every major update for Bleak Faith in the past, and I cover it on the channel, so naturally I'm going to check out the newest playable demo. I also covered the first demo when it came out in 2019, but if we compare the current state of the game to that, it's almost unrecognizable. Anyway, let's start talking about the demo itself. The first thing that you see before you start playing is the big disclaimer about the demo. A lot of features are not active, like inventory, narrative elements, and so on. The difficulty is also reduced, there are bugs in the demo, and the game is simply unfinished. But the demo should give us a good indication of what kind of a game we can expect. The developers told me that the demo has about 50 minutes of content. I spent around 6 hours with the demo and I finished it more than a couple of times just to be sure that I experience everything that I can. The demo offers you 3 different character classes to play, and each of these characters have different skills and stats. There is a paladin-like character, Technomagus, which is like a reaper with really cool abilities, and dual-wielding assassin-like character that also has a bow. Now keep in mind that all of these characters are just template classes for the purpose of the demo. Bleak Faith is an RPG, you will start the game as a blank character and progress however you want. So don't take these character classes too serious. I started the demo with Cryo Paladin, but I quickly switched to Jagger because I wanted to try out the range gameplay. The first thing that I started testing right away is the character movement and controls. Those fundamentals are the most important thing in every third-person action RPG, Souls-like game, or pretty much every game that relies on the combat as the main feature. And I'm happy to say that the character movement in general feels pretty good in the demo. It still lacks some polish obviously, and some actions feel a bit janky like grabbing on ledges, but that was to be expected in the demo. Using the character skills is seamless and snappy as well. But what about the combat itself? Well, I'm glad you asked. Bitch. Even though Bleak Faith has a stamina meter, I wouldn't label it as stamina-based combat system. Simply because I never felt like stamina is a huge limiting factor in fights with regular enemies. Even in boss fights, it's pretty hard to have your stamina depleted, only if you spam your attacks like a madman, which will probably get you kills. So if you're not a huge fan of stamina-based gameplay, you shouldn't be turned off by a stamina bar in this game. It's not extremely punishing, based on this demo at least. I think that's actually good because I can see how the combat would feel a lot more sluggish if the stamina management was more aggressive. The other resource in combat is your mana bar, and all of your skills need mana in order to be used. So that's a pretty standard design that works. The regular attacks with melee weapons depend on the weapon type, but they all work pretty much the same. You have a couple of different attack animations within the combo which you can perform. When it comes to regular enemies, if you manage to land your attack first, 90% of the time you will easily kill them or hit them enough to be able to perform the execute mechanic. However, we must remember that the difficulty of the demo is reduced and a lot of features are missing, like they said in the opening screen. I'm not saying the demo is easy, but it's neither extremely challenging. The boss fights are a major difficulty spike, but we'll get to that soon. Now let's talk a bit about the sense of impact. There is a subtle hit stop effect, which obviously serves to increase the sense of impact on hits. And combined with the subtle white visual effect on hits, the game tries to create a sense of weight behind every attack. I think it's important to mention that the first version of the new demo had some bugs that were messing with the hit impact mechanics and procedural hit reactions. Procedural hit reaction is how the enemy is reacting to your hits, so that was completely absent in the first version of the demo. But in the newest version of the demo, that has been fixed. I would say the animations upon hit are good, which is also really important for creating an illusion of weight. The bow is the only weapon in the demo with a pretty weak sense of impact upon hit. I think that a simple visual cue for hitting something with a bow would make it a lot better. Sound effects play a big role into this as well. Instead of talking about them, here are a couple of good examples. I would say that most of them are pretty decent and some are really good. The sound effect for blocking with your shield is actually a bit weak. It lacks that oomph effect, I guess. But besides that, I personally don't have any problems with how the sounds sound. I love the intense execute sound, and the blink sound effect sounds really nice. To summarize the sense of impact, I think they know what they're doing, and if they continue in the same manner, I think the final version of the game won't have any major problems when it comes to this. In its current state, the combat definitely needs a bit more work in order to feel really good. Bleak Faith has some standard combat mechanics that you would expect to see in the majority of action-oriented RPGs nowadays. It has an execute and parry buttons, as well as blocking of course. Execute mechanic works pretty good, and I used it a lot with all characters. There are a couple of different conditions where you can actually use executes. You can use it when the health of your enemy is pretty low, in stealth from behind the target, and when you knock down weaker enemies. When it comes to parry mechanic, I'm not sure if I'm using it right, but I think it needs a bit more work in order to feel good. I'm not sure if my timing is off or the parry mechanic doesn't work as intended in the demo. You can even stun this boss in the demo with a timed parry, but I never managed to counterattack or use execute button after that. I don't know, I'm not sure about this, and it could be just a bug, so don't take my word on it. The blocking mechanic is on the same button, but in order to actively block, you need to use a shield. Blocking with melee weapons is possible, but you can't actually hold the block button like with a shield. Playing with Cryo Paladin was the only time when I actually wanted to block. All three characters have unique passive and active abilities. The character with the most interesting active abilities, in my opinion, is the Technomagus. I just love the Reaper playstyle which this character has. The Black Rain ability is really cool, and other abilities with the sight are great. Another ability that I really like is the Jagger's Blink that does a really nice damage, and it also goes through enemies. Cryo Paladin has a couple of frost kills and a healing beacon, which is always really useful. Although I think the visual effect for this kill is just a placeholder because it looks really rough. The frost spell that stun enemies is obviously really useful. The most important thing when it comes to different abilities from these characters and weapon types is the amount of playstyles that we can expect to see in the final game. I didn't even mention stealth mechanics, which can also create totally different playstyles. You have a dedicated sneak button and enemies have a stealth detection meter. Stealth mechanics actually work great in the demo, except the indicator for stealth detection, which can easily get bugged. So yeah, I think we'll have a lot of different playstyles to choose from in the final game. I just hope the balancing will be good. This demo has two boss fights. Well, actually one big boss fight and a mini boss. But let's just focus on the big guy, which is definitely the highlight of the demo. The design of this boss fight in general is pretty good, even though in the final version of the game this whole level and the boss fight itself won't be exactly the same. Anyway, Silicon Visage has a good amount of mechanics that he uses. However, if you're an experienced Souls-like player, you probably won't have a ton of problems in this fight. But the boss is definitely not a pushover, that's for sure. I would say the difficulty of this fight is intermediate in general, and again, we must take in consideration that the difficulty of the demo is reduced. Anyway, Silicon Visage has a couple of scripted phases where you have to pay attention. What I found particularly interesting is how a big part of this zone in the demo is foreshadowing this boss. That's a small sample of the environmental storytelling that we can expect in the final game, I guess. Speaking about the zones in the demo, it's just a small linear area of the game. But even so, it's not 100% linear. You have a couple of different paths that you can take, and important zones are interconnected with a vertical map design. You can also find some secrets in the demo as well. For what it's trying to accomplish, the demo is really good in general, even though it's just a small sample of the full game. I have found some bugs, but I don't feel the need to talk about them specifically, because that was to be expected. None of the bugs were game-breaking though. I already sent my technical feedback to the developers and they actually fixed a lot of stuff in the newest patch for the demo. This demo will be available for Kickstarter backers and content creators. I'm not sure if they're going to release it for everyone at some later date, like they did for the first demo back in 2019. And that's pretty much it when it comes to this new demo. Tell me your opinion about Bleak Faith in the comments below. You can also join their official Discord and leave feedback and impressions if you like the game. These guys are really active on Discord and they respond frequently to messages. Don't forget to subscribe for more RPG contents. If you want to support the channel in the long run, consider becoming a Patreon or a YouTube member. You can get your name on the end credits as well as some other perks like early access to videos, Discord roles, my plans for future content, etc, etc. That will be all, and I'll see you in the next one.